Hello and welcome to Anatomy of an Article Reference, the second video in the series about APA citation formatting. Let's get right to it by dissecting this sample reference. We'll walk through the elements from beginning to end and talk about some of the finicky formatting, and then afterward you'll have a chance to quiz yourself to make sure you got it all. First up, the authors. In APA it looks like this: last name, comma, first initial, period, second initial, if there is one, period. Notice the space between the two initials. Then, if there is more than one author, you follow that initial with a comma and start all over again with the next author. The one change is that before the last author's name, whether it is the second or the 20th, you include an ampersand, which is that funny little and symbol. The author section of the reference always ends with a period, which for individual authors with initials is easy, but remember it is the same for what APA calls corporate authors. For example, if the author were the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, it would still have a period at the end of the name. Next up, the date. As you can see, it is in parentheses, and in this case, it is just the year. That will be the case for all academic journals. You may need to add the month and day for sources like newspapers and blog posts that are regularly updated. Once again, the section ends with a period. Are you seeing a trend? The date is followed by the article title. It seems straightforward enough, but not so fast. Notice the capitalization. In APA formatting, you only capitalize the first letter of the first word of an article title, and then the first letter of the first word after the colon, if that applies. So in this case, you see that the C for competent is capitalized, and then the A for an, which is the first word after the colon, is capitalized. Of course, you do make an exception for proper nouns, and you leave those capitalized. So, for our example, if the title were Competent in Any Context, an Integrated Model of Interprofessional Education in the United States, the U and the S for United States would be capitalized. And once again, the article title ends with a period. Next comes the journal information. This section begins with the journal title. You can see it is put in italics, but again, notice the capitalization here. It's different from the article title. Every major word is capitalized. Conjunctions and prepositions are not. The title is followed by a comma, and then the volume number, again in italics. Next is the issue number, and this may be a little different for those people who are coming from using the 6th edition of the APA manual, where most academic journal references left this out. The 7th edition of the manual includes it. The issue number is in parentheses and plain text, not italics. And notice there is no space between the volume and issue number. The issue number is followed by a comma, and then finally, last up in the journal information section is the page range. Once again, these numbers are in plain text, and they end with a period. Now for the final element of a journal article reference, the DOI. For those of you who are not familiar with DOIs, that stands for Digital Object Identifier, and is a unique number assigned to most scholarly articles, and actually now expanding to other types of publications as well, but that's a conversation for another time. It's a more reliable way of locating the article than a web address, because no matter how many times a publisher redesigns its web page, the DOI should stay constant. A note about locating the DOI. At this point, most DOIs are included on the PDF of an article right alongside the journal information. However, for older articles, say from the mid-1990s, which was when DOIs began being used, you may need to check the publisher's website for the article to locate the DOI. Once you have it, put it in this web address format, because believe it or not, it won't always appear in this format, so you may need to do some editing there. And finally, last point about DOIs, and something that is also new for the 7th edition. If you could not find a DOI for an article, simply leave it out. You no longer need to substitute the web address. You simply leave it blank. Okay, that was a lot, so let's summarize some of the weirder and finickier bits. Capitalization. Remember the different capitalization between article title and journal title. The journal title is capitalized the way we normally would think it would be, but the article title only capitalizes the first word and then the first word after the colon, if there is one. Italics. The journal title and the volume number are in italics. People frequently forget to italicize the volume number. No italics for issue number or page numbers, though. And finally, DOI. Most articles in scholarly journals will have a DOI. Remember to put the DOI in the format of a web address, and if you can't find a DOI, leave it out entirely. So that concludes the anatomy of an article reference. If you'd like to test your knowledge, please take the brief quiz that follows this video in the module. Then next up, we'll walk through what a reference list entries look like for a book and a book chapter, all the component parts and the formatting. See you there.